It was a chilly October evening in Meadowbrook, a small suburban neighborhood known for its tranquility and friendly community. The kind of place where everyone knew each other's names and kids played in the streets until the streetlights came on. But for 17-year-old Clara Thompson, this night was about to shatter the peaceful illusion of Meadowbrook forever. Clara's parents had gone out of town for the weekend, leaving her in charge of the house. She relished the independence and had planned a quiet night of studying for her upcoming SATs. The house felt unusually quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old wooden floors and the distant hum of the refrigerator. As Clara sat at the dining table surrounded by textbooks and notes, a soft, rhythmic tapping caught her attention. It was coming from the front door. She paused, listening intently. The tapping continued, steady and deliberate. Clara's curiosity got the better of her. She walked over to the front door and peered through the peephole. At first, she saw nothing but darkness. Then, just as she was about to turn away, she saw the shadow of a person moving away from the door. Clara's heart raced. She stumbled back, unsure of what to do. She grabbed her phone and dialed her best friend, Jake. "Jake, there's someone at my door. I don't know who it is. They just walked away. What should I do?" Clara's voice trembled with fear. Jake, always the rational one, told her to lock all the doors and windows and call the police if the knocking continued. Clara nodded, though Jake couldn't see her, and hung up. She hurried to secure the house, making sure every entrance was locked, but the knocking didn't stop. It followed her from room to room as if the person outside was testing each window and door. Clara's fear grew with every step. She retreated to her bedroom, her sanctuary, and locked the door behind her. She sat on her bed, clutching her phone, ready to call the police. Suddenly, Clara's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "I'm watching you," it read. Her blood ran cold. She looked around the room, searching for any sign of an intruder, but saw nothing. The tapping on her window made her jump. Slowly, she approached it, her heart pounding in her chest. She parted the curtains slightly, just enough to see outside. There was no one there, just the empty backyard and the dark outline of the trees. Clara's mind raced. Who could it be? A prank? Someone from school? She couldn't think of anyone who would go to such lengths to scare her. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Check the basement." She stared at the text, her hands shaking. The basement was the last place she wanted to go, especially now. But something compelled her to move. She needed to end this nightmare. Gathering all her courage, Clara made her way to the basement door. She opened it slowly, the creak of the hinges echoing through the house. She flipped the light switch, but nothing happened. The bulb was out. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and descended the stairs, the beam of light cutting through the darkness. The basement was cold and damp, filled with old furniture and boxes of forgotten memories. She moved the flashlight around, looking for anything out of place. At first, she saw nothing, but then in the far corner, she spotted a small, crumpled piece of paper. She picked it up, her hands trembling. Written in a shaky hand, the note read, "I need your help." Clara's fear turned to confusion. She looked around, trying to make sense of it all. That's when she heard a faint noise, like someone shifting their weight. Clara turned, shining her flashlight towards the source of the noise. A figure emerged from the shadows, not the sinister face she had seen earlier, but a young woman, pale and frightened. She looked as though she hadn't eaten or slept in days. The woman spoke, her voice weak and desperate. "My name is Emily. I used to live here. Please, you have to help me." Clara's mind raced. This had to be some kind of trick, right? But the fear in Emily's eyes was real. Clara decided to listen. Emily explained that she had run away from home and had been hiding in the abandoned house next door. She had seen Clara's parents leave and thought she might find some help here. Clara knew she couldn't turn her back on Emily despite her fear. She had to do something. "We need to call the police," Clara said, but Emily shook her head. "No, they won't understand. Please, just let me stay here for the night. I promise I'll leave by morning." With no other options, Clara agreed to let Emily stay in the basement. She made sure Emily had food and water and promised to find a way to get her to safety. But the mysterious figure outside wasn't done. The knocking continued, relentless and menacing. Clara spent the night wide awake, her mind a whirlwind of fear and determination. She had to protect Emily no matter what. As dawn broke, she devised a plan. She would get Emily out of Meadowbrook and to a place where she could be safe, but it wouldn't be easy. The person outside seemed determined to scare her. Clara managed to sneak Emily out of the house in the early morning hours, using the back roads and alleys to avoid being seen. They drove for hours, heading towards a nearby shelter that helped runaways and those in need. Along the way, Emily told Clara more about her situation and why she was so afraid of the police. As they reached the shelter, Clara knew this was just the beginning. They had managed to escape for now, but Emily's situation was far from resolved. She would have to stay vigilant, always looking over her shoulder, always ready to protect Emily. And so, Clara and Emily parted ways at the shelter, two strangers bound by fear and necessity, forever changed by the events of that chilling October night in Meadowbrook. The echoes of their ordeal would haunt them, a constant reminder of the dangers that can lurk just beneath the surface of everyday life. And that, my friends, is the story of Clara Thompson and the mysterious events of Meadowbrook. Remember, sometimes the real horror isn't in the supernatural, but in the very real dangers that can lurk in the shadows. Stay safe and always trust your instincts. You never know when you might find yourself in a situation just like Clara's. John Mitchell was your typical suburbanite, a 35-year-old software engineer living alone in a quaint two-story house in a quiet neighborhood. His life was uneventful, almost monotonous. Work from 9 to 5, dinner at 7, bed by 11. Routine was his comfort, his shield against the chaos of the world. One chilly October evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, John settled into his evening ritual. After a long day of coding, he prepared a simple dinner and sat down to watch his favorite TV show. But tonight, something felt off. There was a heaviness in the air, an unsettling silence that blanketed the neighborhood. At exactly 9:30 p.m., John's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, an unknown number. Normally, he would ignore it, but tonight, curiosity got the better of him. "Hello?" he answered. A raspy voice on the other end, almost a whisper, said, "Are you alone?" John frowned. "Who is this?" The line went dead. Shaking his head, he dismissed it as a prank call. But as the minutes ticked by, an uneasy feeling crept over him. He tried to focus on his show, but the voice lingered in his mind. The next night, at the same time, his phone rang again. Same unknown number. "Hello?" John answered a bit more sternly. "Do you know what's outside your window?" the voice asked. John felt a chill run down his spine. He hung up immediately, drawing the curtains shut. He checked the locks on all the doors and windows, his heart racing. Was someone watching him? The following day at work, he couldn't concentrate. He told his colleague Lisa about the calls. She suggested it was just some kids messing around, but John wasn't so sure. The calls continued every night, each time more disturbing. The voice would describe in detail what John was doing. "I see you're wearing a blue shirt," or "How was your chicken dinner?" John reported the calls to the police, but with no real threat and no way to trace the number, there was little they could do. Frustrated and scared, he decided to install security cameras around his house. One evening, after another eerie call, John reviewed the footage from the night before. His blood ran cold. At 9:30 p.m., a shadowy figure appeared at the edge of his property, standing perfectly still for several minutes before vanishing into the night. Determined to catch the stalker, John stayed up the next night watching the live feed from his cameras. At exactly 9:30 p.m., his phone rang. He let it ring as he stared at the screen. The figure appeared again, but this time it moved closer to the house. John's heart pounded as he grabbed a baseball bat and headed downstairs, his phone still ringing. He burst through the front door, bat in hand, ready to confront whoever was tormenting him. But there was no one. He searched the yard, the street, but found nothing. Defeated, he went back inside, his phone now silent. Days turned into weeks and the calls stopped. John began to relax, thinking it was finally over. One evening, as he was getting ready for bed, his phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Look under your bed." His heart stopped. He didn't want to, but he had to know. He grabbed his bat, crouched down, and slowly lifted the bed skirt. There was nothing. He sighed in relief, but then he noticed something. A small black device taped to the underside of his bed. A camera. His mind raced. Someone had been inside his house. As he frantically searched the rest of his home, he found more cameras hidden in the most intimate places. His bathroom, his bedroom, even his living room. He called the police and an investigation ensued. They discovered the cameras were transmitting to a nearby abandoned house. When they raided the place, they found a makeshift surveillance station but no sign of the perpetrator. Months passed and John moved to a new city, hoping to leave the nightmare behind. He changed his number, installed a high-tech security system, and tried to rebuild his life. But every night, at 9:30 p.m., He couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. He would sit by his phone waiting, fearing the call would come again. And one night it did. "You can't hide from me, John," the voice whispered. John realized that some horrors once invited into your life never truly leave. They follow you, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sleep well, dear listeners. And remember, if your phone rings tonight, think twice before answering. Thank you for joining us for tonight's tale. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chilling narratives. Until next time, stay safe and keep your doors locked. Sarah Jenkins was a 28-year-old freelance graphic designer living alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Her days were filled with client meetings and design projects, while her evenings were spent unwinding with a good book or a movie. She enjoyed the solitude and the freedom her lifestyle afforded her. One Friday evening in mid-October, Sarah decided to stay in and catch up on some work. The weather outside was turning colder, with a light drizzle tapping against her windows. She made herself a cup of tea and settled into her cozy living room, the soft glow of her laptop illuminating her face. At around 8 p.m., Sarah received a call from her friend Lisa inviting her to a party. Sarah politely declined, explaining that she had too much work to do. After a brief chat, they hung up, and Sarah returned to her designs. As the night progressed, the sound of the rain grew heavier, creating a soothing background noise. At around 9:30 p.m., Sarah's phone buzzed with a notification. She picked it up to see an alert from her apartment building's security app. It was a motion detection notification from the front entrance camera. Curious, she opened the app and watched the live feed. The camera showed a man standing just outside the building's entrance, staring directly into the camera. He was dressed in dark clothing, his face partially obscured by a hood. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She waited, watching the man for a few minutes, but he didn't move. She tried to convince herself that he was just waiting for someone and returned to her work, but she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in her stomach. An hour later, another notification came through. This time it was from the hallway camera on her floor. She hesitated before opening the app again. The same man was now standing at the end of her hallway, facing away from the camera. He seemed to be looking at the doors as if searching for something. Sarah felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. She decided to call building security. The guard on duty assured her they would check it out and call her back. She hung up, her eyes glued to the app's live feed, waiting for the guard to appear. Minutes passed, feeling like hours, but the guard never showed up. Instead, the man began to move. He walked slowly down the hallway, stopping at each door, listening. Sarah's apartment was at the very end of the hallway. She watched in horror as he approached, pausing longer at each door the closer he got. When he finally reached her door, he stopped. Sarah held her breath. He turned towards her door and lifted his hand, gently knocking 3 times. The sound echoed through her apartment, sending chills down her spine. She muted her phone and crept towards the door, peeking through the peephole. The man's face was now fully visible. He had a gaunt, pale complexion, and his eyes were wide, almost manic. He knocked again, this time louder. Sarah's mind raced. Should she call the police? The security guard hadn't called back yet. She decided to stay quiet and hope he would go away. The knocking stopped. Sarah waited, her ear pressed against the door, straining to hear any sound. Suddenly, she heard a faint scratching noise, like something being slid under her door. She stepped back and looked down. A small white envelope was now lying on her doormat. She hesitated, then picked up the envelope. It was blank with no markings or writing on it. She opened it cautiously, revealing a single piece of paper inside. Written in neat, almost meticulous handwriting were the words, "I know you're in there, Sarah." Her blood ran cold. How did he know her name? Panic set in. She ran to her living room and called the police, explaining the situation as clearly as she could despite her shaking voice. The dispatcher assured her that officers were on their way. Minutes later, she heard the sound of footsteps running down the hallway, and then loud banging on her door. "Police! Open up!" She rushed to the door and let them in, her hands trembling. The officers quickly searched her apartment and the hallway, but the man was gone. They found no trace of him anywhere in the building. The police took her statement and promised to increase patrols in the area. They advised her to stay with a friend or family member for the night, but Sarah insisted on staying. She felt that leaving would be admitting defeat to whoever this man was. For the next few days, Sarah remained on edge, jumping at every little sound. She installed additional locks on her door and kept her phone with her at all times. The man never returned, and the police never found any leads. Life slowly returned to normal, but Sarah could never fully shake the feeling of being watched. Months passed, and the incident became a distant memory. Sarah continued with her work, her life settling back into its usual rhythm. But every now and then she would catch a glimpse of a figure out of the corner of her eye, or hear a faint knock late at night, and the fear would return. Sarah realized that some experiences leave a permanent mark. They change the way you see the world, making you question the safety and security you once took for granted. And though the man never returned, the memory of his visit haunted her. A constant reminder that sometimes the real monsters are the ones we cannot see. Thank you for joining us for tonight's tale. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chilling narratives. Until next time, stay safe and keep your doors locked.